Welcome back, Billiken fans. It's Zach Miller and Peter Hale. It's the Midtown Madness Podcast. Before we get going, thank you again for listening. And if you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button. This episode and the whole season of the Midtown Madness Podcast, as I'm sure you are keenly aware, is brought to you by Two Men in a Garden. Whether you like it mild or hot, chunky or cantina style, the people over at Two Men have you covered. I know we're getting into the heart of the summer, and sometimes it's a little too hot outside for that spicy kick. The good news, though, is that you can find all of the Two Men in a Garden salsa variety, all of the Two Men in a Garden salsas in varieties like mango, strawberry, and peach. They even offer a sugar-free version. You can pick up their many products at any local grocery store or online at twomeninagarden.com. They're also on social media, Instagram and Twitter at Two Men Salsa. Pete, just a quick note I want to, throw out there before we get going. I feel like one of our top demographics is the young alumni. And Billikens of the Last Decade is hosting an event at Humphreys on June 24th at 2 p.m. Trying to get people to come out and obviously feel nostalgic for an afternoon.
Yeah, sounds like a good event. I'm just honestly just finding out about it as part of the notes here. But yeah, absolutely. And Billikens the Last Decade, Zach, trying to remember now, would that include you or not?
This is my last year.
Okay. All right. So we've got a borderline case here. All right.
I believe my graduation was 2000. Wait, no. Yeah. So this is my last year. My graduation was 2013. So, yeah.
So they include you this year, and then that's it. And then you got to start paying the big bucks.
Yes.
To go to alumni events.
Yes. Or just not go.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I still would make the Billikens the last 2 decades, but we're getting close on that deadline too for me, a couple more years.
Pete, we had a Billiken play. I would say this is I would consider Billiken soccer had a good chance to win the NCAA tournament a couple of years ago. Do you think this was Toby Gillen running at the 5K for the NCAA championships in Austin? Do you think this is closer than men's soccer got?
10 seconds, he was really
okay. Fair play.
He was in the middle of the pack for a while, right? I mean, the kid, and as we'll get into in a second, the kid from Stanford really played it well, ran away with it in the end. I guess as much as you can, right? And I know it was not optimal conditions for a record time, but yeah, I mean, look, Toby just had to run a little bit better, and he was right there. I mean, I think a lot of the guys in this race were kind of in the thick of it, so it could have been any of them. But yeah, I would say this is closest for sure.
He finished 13 of 23 with a time of 14:36. The winner was Kai Robinson of Stanford, who ran a 14:03.77, which is ridiculous.
Yeah, I thought it was 14:04. I may have put a typo in there. But regardless, very close. Yeah, I think this is right, actually. But yeah, this was at the championships in Austin on Friday the 9th. It was kind of a late start to it, wasn't it, Zach?
It was
about 10 local time.
Yeah, I was actually at Chaffetz for Billy Strings, which was one of the more bizarre experiences of my life. Yeah. All I gotta say is there were dudes outside selling balloons of nitrous, and I gotta say, they might have big business. Business could be booming here if they stand outside there during basketball season.
If you're gonna get through a game with this team against LaSalle in mid-February, I think you're absolutely right. I think maybe a little assistance could help out.
Yeah, and then they had grilled cheese. Some guy was out there with like a tiny propane tank and a burner plate and making grilled cheese outside, like selling it. Like what? Like,
yeah, So it sounds to me a lot like the lot at a dead show or at a
That
fish show.
would
I mean,
be.
I have a friend back in St. Louis who followed the Dead several years in a row, and he didn't sell cheese. He sold something that you're technically not supposed to sell. But regardless, yeah, he told me about all of the different sort of vendors, unofficial vendors, selling things like, yeah, grilled cheese, all kinds of exciting and interesting things.
I gotta say, I don't think we'll be seeing many bikes chained to signs outside Chaffetz during a men's basketball game.
Maybe not in winter,
No,
but
it was very weird, very weird. But anyway, yeah, let's get back to Toby Gillen. He was named second team All American for the 5K. Uh, Truly incredible season, Pete.
yeah, it's great. And honestly, when you think about it, if I understand this right, it was the top. This was the top 24 guys, right, in the country, and he was number 13 in the West regional, and then I think it's just the two regionals. They take the top 12 from each. So he was number 13. He made it into the top 12 from his heat. So he was kind of like a fringe, right? Like he would have been right on the edge of the top 24, the guys running this race. And to finish in the middle of the pack, I think would be him, outperforming expectations, certainly from the beginning of the season, as he's done all year. But even here at the end, I think it's one of those John Bell told us he was just like, we just wanted him to get to the final, and he did, and finished right in the middle of the pack. And yeah, totally respectable, great season. It's no wonder that he's kind of, you know, being targeted for bigger and better things.
Man, I would really love to break down, his training plan. And I don't know if that's just me being a nerd for like, training and stuff like that. But I would find it interesting to see how he has progressed, where he's just constantly hitting PRs and
Mhm.
smashing them and improving every time.
Yeah, that's right. Although this wouldn't have been his best time of the season, right? I mean,
No, but I
I'm
mean,
looking up the stats
but
now, but
leading into the final or the but leading into the final, his race in the West Regional was, I mean, it was up until then they had progressed upward,
right. Yeah. So
and
he ran,
including that one.
yeah, so he ran 13:30:27. So he would have won this thing going away, had he run that again. But if the winner only ran 14:04, it's
Yeah,
just, I think I saw that it was in the mid 80s when they ran this, or it was in
yeah.
the 80s, and it looked humid. I mean, these guys were sweating buckets. I mean, you could just tell it was hot and sticky, and not the ideal conditions, not perfect. Um, but certainly, like you said, I mean,
It
14:04 is still a great time.
it is also one of those races where I think there's more strategy,
Sure.
and leading out in those first mile or two. I mean, you're going, but I mean there is some holding back and jostling and staying in the pack, and it's a little bit more than a time trial.
Yeah, for sure. I was trying to it's so hard, like they zoom in every once in a while on these guys and there's the pack of them. And I recognize him, right? I recognize the bib and everything and his look, his haircut. So I could usually spot him pretty quickly. And I was trying to kind of get a read on his face, like to kind of see if he looked strained or pained or like he just seemed so locked in. I mean, it's almost like expressionless. Like he's just
Yeah, you have to just turn off their mind
right.
for the in the run. They're just, I mean, just totally go zen. It's insane.
Yeah. Now, remind me, Zach, what his background is?
Cross country, I think.
Yeah, he was more of so track is sort of like he's a little bit late to the game in it, which means like a lot of these guys who have been doing this their whole, maybe not whole lives, but since like middle school or whatever, are way more, I don't know, experienced. They're at a different point in their arc, and the fact to me that he is where he is as a sophomore who's only been doing this for a few years, this specific thing, I mean, it tells me like he's got a really high ceiling, maybe relative to some of the other guys in this race, juniors and seniors who may have been doing this for the last half of their lives to this
Yeah.
point.
Yeah.
So it seems like he's got a ways to go.
Yeah. I think his main interest, I guess, was cross country, but obviously you probably do both growing
Sure.
up, and which leads us to our next point. We know he's in the portal. What is his plan? Obviously, there was a rumor on Billikens.com that he was interested in Northern Arizona,
Yeah.
which, to your point, to the thing about cross country, Northern Arizona, according to this poster, or a poster, is one of the top cross country teams. Any Southwest, West Coast program is gonna rock it at track and field or cross country.
Northern Arizona is interesting too. Flagstaff, by the way, great town. I love Flagstaff. It's a little more altitude. It's a lot different than like Phoenix or especially Tucson. It's the other part of the state, like up north, kind of surrounded by forests. It's a little more mountainous, really thin,
Oh
dry
yeah,
air.
get that altitude training.
It's the kind of place where you could really see like very serious. Yeah, you're right. Altitude
Oh
like
yeah,
track athletes going. I think they've got, I mean, it's a beautiful campus. They've got good facilities for that kind of thing. There was a kid from NAU in the top 23. I think there was a 24th kid who didn't wind up running, and only 23 went off in this race, but one of them was from Northern Arizona. So yeah, I mean, look, I don't know if that's just speculation or whatever. It's also interesting that I find in my Instagram feed, like a couple days after we talk about him and transferring, we see what the Oregon track facility. I think I shared this with you.
yeah.
The Oregon track facilities, which are already incredible, and they're going to keep getting better. They keep adding on and upgrading and things like that, and truly the elite track facilities in the United States. So, look, if Toby's got a shot to either go to one of the elite programs of this sport, or a place where he's just got unlimited resources, facilities, the training he needs to get himself in the Olympics for Australia. Look, it's hard
No,
to
I'm going
begrudge him that.
full Michael Scott here. If he transfers, no, I'm kidding. Yeah, no, it's what was my response to you? You know that my loyalty to St. Louis University knows no bounds, but I'd have to think about it.
Yeah, everybody's got a price,
I
but
mean, the Oregon, I mean, there's no competing. There's no way.
there's nothing like that. I mean, he's
Yeah.
basically on a pretty bare bones track behind the medical school, right? I mean,
Yeah.
it's not
I mean, you
as
have to
cool as it is to
go.
like, hey, I could see the arch when I'm running this way.
Yeah.
That's about it, man. I mean, it's
I mean,
it's night and day.
I assume that the track and field team at least has Normatec boots, like the compression boots, right?
Yeah,
Like, I don't know. Have you
sure.
ever seen them? I don't know. Anyway, but like,
You're asking the wrong
yeah,
person.
dudes over at Oregon just have to go about 100 steps to get those boots on. Like Toby Gillen has to like take a shuttle to there's really nothing that, like, I mean, this is one of those things where you can sit here, we'll sit on here and talk about baseball not getting enough, softball not getting enough. I don't know how you, like, there's track, it's kind of where it has to be. Unfortunately, like, at least it's adjacent to campus, right?
Yeah,
Um,
unlike a field hockey or a tennis.
yeah, I mean, and
At
I
this
don't
point.
know, how you add to those facilities in any sort of way that makes sense financially.
Right.
Um, it's tough. It really is. And
Yeah.
John Bell has obviously done well. I mean, I believe he's the first head coach and only head coach. This is a very recently, established program.
Right. Well, I mean, as much as we just established I'm not young alumni anymore. The program was established after I graduated.
Yeah.
So it's been, I think it's been about 15 years that it's been around. Just a few years after I graduated, I know they dropped men's golf, and then they added track, right? Because they had cross
Yes.
country, and then they turned it into a full track program. Yeah. So
Yes, I think they had men's and women's golf.
did they have women?
Or
Yeah. I don't. I think they dropped golf, picked up track. I think it was the right move. I mean, I think it was the right thing, in terms of sports at SLU.
it's a
But
little bit more, um, it offers scholarships or scholarship money because we know they're not getting,
full rides,
massive.
yeah,
Yeah. I mean, you're offering scholarships to maybe less privileged athletes. I guess
sure,
we'll call it that. We'll call it a day
absolutely,
there.
yeah,
So, I mean, it makes sense in the St. Louis University mission sense of the word, I guess.
yeah,
But yeah, so congratulations to Toby Gillen, congratulations to John Bell. And yeah, unbelievable.
right, incredible season.
Yeah, let's talk men's basketball. That's why most of the people listening are here. Uh the new assistant coach, nothing official. Some white smoke has begun to creep from Chaffetz Arena. I've heard a name. I don't want to spoil the party on that one. So sorry guys for that. But the listing was taken down.
Yeah, and that's it came down late last week. As West Pine Bills quickly pointed out, that's normally a sign that things are moving, through the HR department. So it's yeah. I mean, I think if we're starting to hear things like this, I think something is imminent, and I'm sure they'll announce it seconds after we hit send on this podcast on Tuesday morning.
Absolutely.
It's of course the way it'll go. But then we'll give a full buyout next week. We'll be able to talk about it then, I guess.
Yeah, I think if the name I'm hearing is right, it's going to be it'll be interesting. I don't really know what to make of this coach, but they have a long tenure as an assistant, so a lot of experience. So I mean, I don't know. I don't think anybody's going to be like, "Oh my god." But
Well, I mean, look, like if it's an assistant we don't have experience with, like we do Harriman,
yeah,
you don't really know, right? Like
yeah.
if we just don't know directly. Coaching is a small fraternity. We've said that many times. These guys all know each other, know what they do, know what they're like. So look, I'm confident it's going to be the right fit. So I'm excited about it, and looking forward to them making the announcement, and we'll see
Getting
if
on with things.
yeah, we'll see if he can hit the ground running.
We've got a commitment. This one came kind of out of nowhere. Uh, I I don't know. Did it come out of nowhere? Because
Well, this was a name that you texted me before a couple days
right.
before.
So
It's
we had heard that there was going to be. I think someone said it was going to be Tenon Magassa's brother. And so
mhm,
I just searched Tenon Magassa. She played at Dayton and she's at Rhode Island now. And there were 4 names, and one of them was masculine. So, or that's who they were looking at the time. They were
mhm,
recruiting him. And then we heard there was a commitment. And I said, well, there's
yeah,
Aboubacar Magassa.
right,
Um,
right. Yeah, he
yeah.
committed
What a
Aboubacar
name, by the way. What a
Magassa.
great name.
It's a great name, and Zach, it's surprisingly common because when I tried to find his social
Yes.
media, I could not find him. I'm still not sure if he's on Twitter or Instagram or anything like that. But a lot of other dudes named Aboubacar Magassa are on Instagram and Twitter, and I've looked through enough to know none of them are him. And yeah, surprisingly common name. But yeah, He's from France. He's listed at 6'9", but there's some dispute about his height. I've heard it range anywhere from 6'6" to 6'10". So I'm not exactly sure how tall he is. He is only 18, so part of this may be a factor of stale listings, kind of, listing him at one thing and then he grows over the course of a season or two or something like that, and they haven't updated their bio. But looking at him on film, I don't know. I'd say somewhere in the middle of that. I'm not sure what Slew's going to announce him as. He kind of looks like, given all of that about his height, he might be kind of a combo forward type. He plays in a league we kind of recruited last year. If you remember, Mael Crespin was a name that we were in on last year. He wound up going to Washington State and then not staying there very long and going back to Europe. But he played in this league as well in France, which is the Espoir League. It's an under 21 league, and he averaged about 11 and 5 with 1.3 steals per game. He plays about 24 minutes a game for Rouen, which plays in that league. So the numbers we have here, he's like 70% from 2 and about 36% from 3. Yeah, I'll take both of those numbers. Absolutely. So pretty decent numbers. I don't think he's a great free throw shooter. And then looking at a little video, I kind of agree with West Pine Bills here. Doesn't have the ball in his hands a ton. Does a lot off ball though, moves well. He seems to understand the flow of the offense and where he needs to be. He sets good screens, and then he really gets after it on the offensive glass. And then defensively, he seems like he tries to be disruptive to get into passing lanes and kind of help his teammates out. I don't think he's going to be like a big blocks guy or like a huge defensive rebounder. Again, if he's more of a combo forward type, that kind of makes sense. So yeah, I mean, he's an intriguing guy, and this is another European big that's coming from Chris Harriman that I'll take a flyer on him. Sure. I'll take a high upside young guy from Europe and kind of see what he can do.
So I love this idea of help side defense, because our help side defense stunk last year.
Yeah. I think look, are we overcorrecting on some things?
Yes.
We're now at 4 bigs. I think you could call it, like 2 4s, 2 5s, and it looks like we're chasing another 5.
I mean, 4 bigs and 3 international bigs. Now that sounds like way more international players than we've had. That might not be the case.
No, I mean, when you think about it, it didn't feel like it, right? Because Okoro's a guy, even though he's Nigerian, he played for Brad Bielema. He played in high school in the States anyway. By the time Martin Linson came on campus, he had been to a few other schools. And then we always had the one guy who would stay for 1 year, who was a developmental big, and we've never been able to hang on to him, whether that's Madani from up from New Jersey by way of Mali, or it's Traore, who is out at Long Beach State now from Ivory Coast, or whether you've got our guy Momo, who's Senegalese, this past year. So we've had a pretty international look to our front court lately, in the kind of post-French era, I'll call it. But what we've done is really just go with a center, right? It's been 3 centers, kind of a center by committee. You've got 2 guys and then a third who doesn't play a whole lot. And now we've got 2 4s, 2 5s, and we're trying to chase another 5 right now. Just a lot different look for the front court. I think a lot more depth. Again, are we overcorrecting in some ways? I don't know. I'm kind of fine with it.
Yeah,
I want to see a different team, and that's what it is this year.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's talk about this other 5 that we're chasing, because as you said that, I looked at you like I have no idea who you're talking about. And that's really sad, because I should. It's Malcolm Dandridge. Pete, talk a little bit about the recruitment and what we know about it so far.
Well, he's a guy we got some familiarity with because we've played him the last couple of years, right? He's from Memphis. He's a big man there. He's a backup who's always kind of been a role player there. And he's played 4 full seasons there. So he would be a grad transfer with 1 season left. And it sounded like like when we talked about this last week, it was like some smoke was building. And then all of a sudden he came out with that list of finalists on an official looking tweet that
You
we took
failed our
seriously. And I guess we
listeners.
shouldn't have. Yeah. It didn't include SLU. So we kind of wrote him off last week. And then sure enough, the portal report the day after we released our episode said that he would visit SLU in Western Kentucky and possibly others later in this process. And then he visited SLU this weekend. I think he's already been to Western Kentucky, but they did get a commitment from 6'11" Georgia Tech transfer Rodney Howard this past week. I don't know how that affects Dandridge. I've kind of heard both things. I've heard, oh, that's got to shut the door on it, right? And then I've heard like, no, they still want him. They still need another big guy.
That's what somebody would say. I wonder if Western Kentucky fans were saying the same thing.
Yeah.
When Aboubacar Magassa committed. And you know what? It kind of lines up.
Right.
I mean, if he would have found out that Magassa was going to commit, he might have left SLU off the top 5, you know.
I think the difference here is they're going to be different positions. Right? Like maybe Magassa's still growing and in a couple of years he'll look more like a 5, but right now no, he's a forward. He's a 3-4 kind of guy. Whereas Dandridge is a guy who could come into SLU, and even with Brad coming in from Georgetown, I think he's a guy who would probably be the starter from day one. And that's a little different. Like even if he knows, like we brought in another 5, we've got a few young guys coming in, a couple 4s and a 5. I think he realizes it's his starting job to lose. So that's a little bit different than competing for minutes with a 6'11" guy from Georgia Tech who might think he's the starter. There's always the option to return to Memphis. And then, he talked about possibly other visits. Who knows? I think he's probably going back to Memphis this week, figuring out what his options are. And we should know something fairly soon on this one. I can't think he's going to drag it on too much longer.
What a wild experience it has to be to be a guy that is being just hounded by schools, like recruited, like, and just being brought on campus and everyone's trying to sell you your future. Like that is a preposterous situation to be in.
It is, but he's a guy at this point in the process. I wonder if his options are a little more limited than some of the others. Like, timing is everything.
I was just taking that and applying it to just
in general.
Yeah.
No, I agree. And then in this era, you've got the added wrinkle of who knows if guys are kind of playing offers off each other right now, right? Because it's not just the offer of like, what can you do for my playing time, my career, my development, my prospects. It's how much can you pay me, and how does that look, and over what time horizon would I be paid? Those sorts of things matter in a way that they never did before. So I never know how earnest a recruit is when he visits,
Yeah.
I think Magassa just came on campus and I don't know if he was already committed by the time he did or what. Von Bussel hasn't been on campus yet and is committed.
Keep forgetting about Steph.
Hopefully he will be soon. And then you've got other guys who come and go and haven't committed yet. And I just don't know, like maybe we're his front runner, but I don't know the process of like because the different offers have different layers to them now. It's not just a scholarship and a plan.
I know it's not like in vogue to talk about how, amateurism and all, like, but the way you spoke about, it's no longer about what can you do for me, my career, what can you offer me playing time, advance my abilities, develop me as a talent. Man, that just makes college basketball magical. Pre-NIL, man. That's so great that like that is what decides who wins and loses. It's just what coach can gather the right amount of players based on their ability to offer their skills to a player. Like that's amazing.
You want the incentives to line up for these kids too, right? Like I feel happy for someone if they found the best fit for them and their long-term development and their happiness in college and all of those things, if that lines up with the best offer, the best NIL package, whatever,
Yeah.
great, good. Like, I'm so glad it worked out for you. But I know for a fact there are a lot of recruits that we've lost out on, guys that we've recruited who have gone elsewhere for more money and less opportunity. Like, it's just 100% true. When you're looking at where some of these guys are going and clearly chasing their best offers from the richest programs, who can offer them the most right now. Now, I do think at some point the richest programs are going to go, why are we giving this guy this much to play 6 minutes a game? You know, like
Yep.
this stuff's going to settle out over time, and we'll get into some more details on that later. But I just don't know how much of a shelf life there is for guys to go be backup bigs or whatever at a bigger program for a lot of money and really not much production. So we'll see if that starts to kind of swing back a little bit or settle into more of a a predictable pattern. But regardless, I think there are a lot of guys who are, and I don't know what the exact dollar difference is in these cases, but they're chasing some short-term extra money, maybe for something that isn't necessarily going to help their career.
It's what kind of NIL package do you think West Point is putting together?
Oh, that's a funny question. I actually had not. I guess I had not
Besides that
thought of that
million
from their
dollar
end.
loan.
Right. That's a really interesting question.
No, I posed the question because Slew was linked to Jalen Rucker. He's a West Point transfer. He was linked. I believe the first person to say it was the one on Billikens.com.
Who's normally pretty
Uh,
solid.
yes, he is right in the middle of it all. Uh, Pete, tell us a little bit about this kid and why maybe it might not be a done deal or even going to happen.
Yeah, so he's like you said, West Point transfer, and he's scored about 17 points a game over the past 2 seasons. He's been a first team all conference player in the Patriot League, a league I really like, honestly. And he's got 2 years of eligibility remaining if you include the COVID bonus season, because his freshman year would have been that year. He entered the portal after the deadline, so he would need a waiver. So there's one layer of complication right there. And then the second layer is leaving a service academy like West Point. And I've had to do a little kind of research on the fly on this one ever since his name was kind of floated out there. Um, if you leave after what's called affirmation, which is after their second year, like I don't know if it at what point, like in the summer or right before the school year or right after the sophomore year, I'm not really sure. Um, but after 2 years, you basically have to say, yeah, I'm sticking with West Point. I'm staying here. There's a certain number of cadets in every class for whatever reason who just can't go any further. And if at that point they decide not to keep with it, they don't owe service at the end. And then they don't owe anything to West Point. It's kind of a chance to make a clean break. But he's been there for 3 years, which means he went through affirmation and then did another year there. And normally when you leave a service academy after that point, now you owe them for the debt, basically that you've racked up, because these places are tuition, board, all that stuff is free. It's no fees or anything if you get into one. It's really hard to get into one of these places. All kinds of, academic and fitness requirements, in addition to having, you need a letter of recommendation from, I think, two from people in Congress. So it's hard to get in. And for that reason, it's kind of hard to get out. It's not that simple. Excuse me, kind of coughing there. But he might be on the hook for that expense, Zach.
That's so bizarre, man. I know that's wild. That's insane. Like I was just like, because there are times where I'm like, by the way, I'm watching Peter cough and wondering when, dear Lord, am I gonna get to stop stalling? And now I'm trying to make him laugh while coughing,
Yeah, it's
which is
a
making
two
it
front
worse.
battle.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I just think the whole I have a cousin who is at oh God, Navy. So I really need to look into the application process more, because the way I can't, that's a wild gauntlet to get into that to
Yeah,
Army.
and it's just like, so what does a transfer look like at this point? Coming into the portal late with that fact behind him, I just don't know. So it's sort of sounding a little shaky now. Like we thought maybe we'd have a commitment by now, but I'm not so sure that's going to be the case. It may just be a little too complicated of a case in this one.
Uh, one thing that we don't never mind. Screw it. I have nothing. No transition. No great transition to get to this. We've got a new offer out. It looks like he is the son of a former NBA player.
Yeah, this one's to Jerron McKee, who's 2025 shooting guard from St. Joe's Prep in Philly. I guess that means he'll be a junior. Do I have that right? Junior this fall? Yeah. He plays his AAU ball for New Jersey Scholars, which is a Nike EYBL. He's a shooting guard. He's listed at 6'2", 170. He might be a little taller than that by now, though. Certainly his dad was, because he's the son of Aaron McKee, former NBA player who was the Temple coach for quite a while.
Did he play with Hughes at the 76ers?
I think they were there at the same time, weren't
Because
they?
I just remember like around that time playing a ton of NBA Live, and I just remember Aaron McKee on the Sixers.
Yeah, I think they did overlap. But regardless, he was the coach at Temple until a few months ago, and now he's special advisor to the athletic department there. He stepped down as head coach, and oddly enough, Temple just offered him today, about an hour ago, is when he posted it as we record this. And that's only his second offer, because SLU was first to get an offer in, though, which is surprising. He's been on varsity for 2 full years. He's been an all-conference player. He's a good scorer. He has a quick, compact, consistent shooting stroke. I really like his shot, actually. Good handles, gets to the rim. He's got great vision and passing ability, so he can kind of be that combo guard type. He just looks like a well-rounded, smart kind of player, who's got a lot of tools right now for a younger recruit. I really like the look of him, to be honest. You got to like the NBA dad. That's I think I heard. I know it's true in baseball, and I'm sure it is in basketball and others as well. But of any statistical indicator of whether or not someone will be a pro athlete, having a parent who was a pro athlete, I think makes you 800 times more likely to be a pro athlete. So yeah, you gotta like that as well. You get a lot of advantages for that reason, but yeah, good looking player. I like the offer.
I'm gonna go out on a limb and say that his name is pronounced Jaron McKee, because now that I'm looking at it, it's just Aaron with a J, and it might as well be Aaron Jr. Just combined into one name.
You may be right. I don't know. I really don't know. I haven't heard it said.
That's
You
some
know,
galaxy brain thinking.
hey, I think that you're probably more right than.
Uh, so we got a little bit of a schedule update here. What do we know so far, and what do we have that's new?
So the new thing is we got a date for the Carbondale game, which is December 2nd at SIUC. And then I don't think we ever talked about that Southern Indiana would be the first team we play this season at home. It's kind of the same timing as, was it Murray State this year that we kicked off the regular season against? It's basically that same day. I think it was a Tuesday night, and I think it's the same. It was the 7th last year. It'll be November 6th this year against Southern Indiana, who's newer to D1, but a good basketball program. And then in between those two, the weekend before Thanksgiving, we know we're going to Myrtle Beach for that event, which I think will be the 16th to 19th. But that's it so far, Zach. We don't have a date for Drake, NC State. We know those are both road games. I don't know anything else at this point, and we're seeing teams start to release non-conference schedules, like full ones.
We're the last to have it. We're always the last.
We are, and I think a lot of other A10 schools are usually later too, but I'm seeing like Rhode Island Twitter and some other A10 Twitter folks are putting out basically that they've cobbled together almost the full non-conference schedule for some of these teams. They've got 10, 11, 12 dates already, some of these guys. And we've basically got, I guess you would say 5 actual dates if you include 3 for Myrtle Beach.
That's crazy. It just seems like this off season is just dragging on and like with no forward progress.
I know. And somebody said, oh, it's only it's the other, like last week, they were like, oh, it's 5 months until the first game. And I was like, it's been, 2.5 months since the last game, and it feels like a year.
Yeah. It's it's crazy. How little information has come out of that program, and when it hasn't been the most wonderful. So
Yeah.
Pete, we did something a little bit different this week. We put out a poll, and the question was, which Billiken men's basketball player saw the greatest improvement over his career at SLU? Ladies and gentlemen, strap in, because we are about to do a impromptu deep dive on most improved players, courtesy of my amazing co-host, Peter Hale.
I was looking at our notes, Zach. We didn't have a whole lot this week, right? Like right now, if we didn't have this, we just have a couple more short things to talk about, and then we're done. So yeah, this is the meat of the show this week.
Yes.
we're kind of taking a look back, because we got more names than I expected. I expected a few names,
More quality
for sure.
names too.
We did. Yeah, I was surprised by some of these, because some of them I thought, I don't think that's a really good idea. And then I actually looked at the numbers and was like, yep, okay, this makes perfect sense. There were names that I expected to see a lot of people say over and over. And then others that kind of surprised me. But regardless, we got 22 different names. And so I thought, well, I guess I owe it to people, if they're actually engaging with us. I owe it to give them all of them a full appraisal and actually see, like, kind of who's, and I didn't come up with a metric, right? Like, I didn't put them into a spreadsheet that spit out a formula.
Full on. When we talk about this is full on embrace debate. There is no, I don't think there's a right answer here.
I don't think so either. And the reason for that is I put them, as I was doing them, I was copying and pasting the names, like, kind of into an order that I thought was from weakest to strongest of all the suggestions, right? And when I got down to strongest, I really had a hard time ordering, because
That's what you meant. I could not figure out exactly what you meant by that text.
Because I think when you look at, like, as we're looking at this, Zach, the bottom 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I think there's about 8 or so guys, maybe even 9, that I would be fine with as the answer.
Yeah.
But we'll dig in and see what people think.
All right, let's start with the first one, and that is Mike McCall Jr.
Yeah, I don't know if you agree with me here, but I kind of thought this was the weakest of all the ones we got. I was surprised to see it, because I knew he was good as a freshman. I went to the Duke game at Cameron Indoor, and I remember watching the handshake line at the end, and Coach K pulled McCall aside and, like, had some things to say to him, like, into his ears. And I think the gist of it was more like, you're a great player, you're going to have a great career. That was a game that was supposed to be fairly competitive for us, but then Willie Reed and Kwame Mitchell couldn't play. Now you've got a freshman point guard named Mike McCall who has to take over, and he showed pretty well, right? Like, we got our butts kicked. It was Duke, but he showed out pretty well. So I thought, McCall's always been good. Why is he on this list?
Yeah, I think he probably would have been a better candidate had he not gotten that first year and showed that he could impact immediately. And his production really didn't plummet or raise high.
No, he put up really steady stats. He scored 10.4 points a game as a freshman. He never broke 10 again. Look, some of that is because Mitchell came back, right? He had to share the backcourt. And then by the time Mitchell left, now he's got an improved Jordair Jet back there. He's got a lot better guys around him, a lot better pieces around him than he did his freshman year. So I think there's a few different reasons for it.
I forget that Mike McCall was a point guard.
Yeah.
To me he's just a guard, man. Like it just never occurred to me that he was running the show. But I don't have a great memory of that season, that first season.
Yeah. I think if you're going to make a case for his improvement anywhere, it would be defense, right? Like
Yeah.
by his senior year, he was a pretty locked down defender. I think all those guys were. And you're right though. Like when I look at McCall, Mitchell, Jet, it is hard to think of any of them really as a point guard, right? Like they all were just kind of guards at the time. In at least, in my mind's eye.
Let's talk about John Redden. You think he started as a walk-on? I honestly don't know. I certainly remember watching him play, but I don't have much of a memory. This for different reasons.
This is another one where I think the defense is kind of doing the work for the improvement, because by the end, like he was just a complete lockdown defender.
I do remember that though.
Yeah, so his offensive numbers never really took off. He scored 40 points as a freshman, 76 as a sophomore, 50 as a junior, 66 as a senior. There's nothing about that, at least his offensive production, that makes you think that there's a big arc there. His three-point shooting went down every year. His rebounding peaked as a sophomore, and so did steals. But that doesn't necessarily tell the whole story about his defense. So really beyond his freshman to sophomore year, which he kind of took a leap, there's not a lot to point to. I think he was just kind of a solid, consistent role player for 4 years, and just not a name I would have included on this list.
This is an interesting one because I want to say that Jordan Goodwin makes this list way higher if the question is what Billiken had the greatest rise from college to where they are now.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a good point. And that's even him being a top 100 recruit in high school, right? I mean,
yeah,
not all of those guys make the pros. It's not many guys who do. So there was nothing ever guaranteeing that he would do that. When you look at his points though, I mean, like really what he's hindered by here is the fact that he produced right away. 11.5 points a game as a freshman with 7.5 rebounds. And then he missed the last 7 games to a suspension. Fine. I get that. So the hard numbers aren't as big. 10.5 as a sophomore, 7.5 rebounds, 15.5 and 10.5 as a junior, and then 14.5 and just over 10 rebounds as a senior. Shooting percentage peaked as a junior. His free throw percentage was best as a senior. Steals and assists actually peaked his sophomore year. So you're right. I mean, when you look at the overall arc of his career and who he is and where he is now, you can absolutely make the case that he was a better player. But if we're just looking in terms of production, no, I don't think there's a super solid case there.
And if you're looking at his improvement to get to where he is in the NBA, I mean, sweet Jesus. Like, do you know how many people are like unsigned or undrafted free agents that get on G League, this whatever Article 16 or whatever contract it was, and just never go anywhere? Like,
Yeah.
That's off the charts to begin with. Like that's where I think his improvement is, not necessarily in his time at SLU.
It's so hard to make the NBA. We've made this point before, but like when you look at G League rosters, you're like, oh, that's all the guys I remember from college who were good. Yeah. It is so hard to make the NBA. So yeah, like look, overall body of work in his lifetime, of course. I love Jordan Goodwin, but he was just so good as a freshman. I think that's kind of what what keeps him back here.
A player so improved that they named a maneuver after him.
The Heinrich maneuver.
Yes. Chris Heinrich we're talking about here.
The big man from Quakertown, Pennsylvania. He's one, Zach, that like if you had asked me for a few names, I would have given you this one. Just like in the way I remember it. So Chris graduated the spring as I was coming in, right? So we didn't overlap. Just the fact that I'm pretty sure he was living out of the locker room.
He definitely was, I believe. Isn't that a legit confirmed? Sloan confirmed that, right?
Sloan said it, and Sloan did confirm it. I mean, Sloan overlapped with him for a year. Sloan's a year older than I am. And then I started as a manager basically right away in college. And he was definitely sleeping on that sofa in the locker room down there. for a
Be
little
a
bit
much
before.
comfortable living solution now.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure. A little bit different than the basement of West Pine on that old, I don't even know if it was a leather couch. Maybe, I don't know what it was.
I'm shocked he's played in the NBA, or not the NBA, in the pros so long overseas, given the amount of asbestos he had to inhale. Stay sleeping in the basement.
Well, if he did, then I did too, because I spent a lot of long nights in that locker room myself, doing laundry, sometimes my own, sometimes the team's. But I digress. Heinrich was one of those guys when he came on campus, I was like, yeah, he's huge, but he's just a stiff, right? Like he looked big and slow and unathletic. By his senior year, I loved him. I thought he was great. Like he was a really effective big man. And that's in a league at a time where we were playing some really tough competition in the front court. But when you look at his numbers, he actually averaged about 4.3 points a game and 3 rebounds a game as a freshman, and then just under 7 points a game, 4.5 rebounds as a senior. But I think he was just a totally different player by then.
Yeah, I think one of the things we have to take note of is just guys who just freaking love the game of basketball. Like, look at a guy like Heinrich who played for decades, at least 15 years in Germany.
Yeah, and part of that is he qualified for German
Right.
citizenship under the league rule, right? So he didn't count against their foreign players. He was considered a German player.
Yeah,
So
no, but
so
still,
that helped.
I mean,
But man, what a way to make a living.
Yeah, you have to go like that's a tough life. I mean, we're looking at what happened with Hassan French, with his ACL or his knee injury. I don't know if it's an ACL, but apparently there's a GoFundMe for his medical bills or whatever. Like,
Yeah, there is ACL. I think it was ACL, MCL. Yeah,
terrible. So it's not an easy living. It's not an easy life. We do talk about, like a guy like Cartier Gordon should go overseas, get away from it all. Or, I mean, it's not that simple, even though we like to put it that way.
right. It's a tough thing to do.
Man, this name, it doesn't ring out to me most improved.
It's
It
tough.
just rings out as legend.
It's tough because part of it is the same thing that holds back a name like McCall or Goodwin. It's when you score double digits as a freshman, it's hard to say that you improve the most, but what he did as a sophomore, just an incredible leap. And a lot of that had to do with coaching change and a lot of other things going on. But this is Erwin Claggett. And it's really just the freshman to sophomore year, right? Because he was awesome after that. He scored 10.3 points a game as a freshman, put up strong numbers across the board, very good freshman year. And then his scoring actually peaked as a sophomore, 19.7 points a game, 45% from the field, 45% from three, 83% from the line, and then 105 assists, 44 steals, and even 12 blocks. That one really surprised me. Ridiculous sophomore year. So I think the person who enters this one is thinking just, that 1 year of improvement, because he really leveled off after that. Most of those sophomore year numbers were career highs. He wasn't quite as efficient over time as he was putting up more attempts to kind of get to the same number of points a game. But regardless, I mean, Clags was awesome for 3 years. And because of that, he started high, went even higher, and just kind of plateaued in terms of production. Good supporting cast, great teams. Obviously that's the era that really blew it up for me in terms of becoming a fan. So I love the dude forever. I just don't think you can call him the most improved of all time.
Carlos McCauley. This one, he was on those teams that cemented my early childhood fandom.
Yeah, he was. I mean, now we're talking. I mean, he probably overlapped with Claggett, right, by a year, or was he right after him? I should know. I just looked it up, but as a freshman, he scores 3 points a game, and his shooting is poor. He's 34% from the field. He's under 20% from three, makes about 2/3 of his free throws, which is fine. And then as a senior, he puts up 8.2 points a game, on a slash line of 404, 440, 647. So free throw shooting didn't go anywhere, but night and day as an outside shooter, especially. And then he's got weird numbers. He put up the most steals of his career as a freshman. 83 assists as a freshman. Then it dips for 2 years, and then he puts up 94 as a senior. So I think he just kind of played a different role. But, by the time he's a senior, he's a really solid, important rotation player. And that's kind of coming from not a whole lot as a freshman, more of a passer as a freshman. So yeah, it's a pretty interesting career. When you top out at 8.2 points a game, I don't think you're going to be like the dude, but he's definitely one of the guys on this list, and not at the bottom of that list for that reason.
How about Ryan Luchtefeld, Pete?
Yeah, both Luchterfelds were on here. I think Roy recommended them, and I think they're both good nominees. Actually, I didn't realize like how they kind of really didn't produce early on. Ryan appeared in 26 games as a freshman, but didn't really play big minutes. He scored about 2 points a game, not efficient shooting. Then he scores over 5 points a game as a sophomore, 5.5 rebounds per game. Still not like great from the field or the free throw line, but much improved. And then he peaks at 9.8 points a game as a junior. His rebounding also peaked there at 5.7. Big jump at the free throw line. And then now is also the time when he becomes a real threat from three. His numbers actually do drop a bit as a senior, except in blocks and field goal percentage. And then he played in a couple fewer games, but I don't think, his drop in production is really explained by that. So it's kind of a nice clean arc from freshman to junior season, and then he kind of levels off senior year. But regardless, I can see where that's a guy where you're like, oh, he was a really good player for 2 years after not really being much for a couple of years. So I like the nomination there.
This next name is a guy who we definitely owe an interview to, and it's John Duff.
Yeah, he'll be a good one to have on this summer. He really didn't do a ton as a freshman or sophomore. He played in most games, but just scored like 1.5 points on not great shooting numbers. And then as a junior, he's at about 5.5 points, 2 rebounds per game, just under 40% from three, 42% from the field. He's kind of working his way into the rotation, right? And then another big jump senior year. Averages about 8 and 3. He's 43% from the field. He's over 40% from three. And then career highs in everything except free throw percentage, which I think was probably skewed in earlier years by a small sample size anyway. So here's one where I think for the first time in this conversation, we've got a guy who just has a steady, uninterrupted 4-year arc, where he just keeps going up.
Let's go down under for this next one, and it's Rob Lowe. And I got to tell you, I remember Rob Lowe being a steady performer throughout his career, but tell me whether I'm right or if I'm off base.
I agree with you completely, because one of the games I remember most for Rob Lowe, if you remember this one, Zach, 19 points as a freshman against Georgia. It was one of the first.
Wait,
I think it was Georgia.
Oh, okay.
Because it was a non-conference game.
Damn it. I thought you were going to talk about his George Mason game as a senior.
No, this is UGA. We played them at home that year. Early. It was like a November game, and he scored 19, and it was like, oh, this big kid's good. Like he was making his shots from outside. He was a good player. He was getting pushed around, underneath by the big SEC front court. But regardless, I mean, I thought, well, it's weird to see Rob Lowe here, right? Because he was always good. 6.7 points a game, 3.5 rebounds a game as a freshman. You get to the end, and then he's over 10 points a game as a senior. 5.7 rebounds a game. So clearly there's an improvement there. But then, I mean, really, Zach, as a defender, it was night and day, like he added to his body. He got a lot more physical. He really bought into what Majerus was teaching. More than
so
doubled.
Good at that seal on the drive. Unbelievable seal.
Really, really underrated off-ball player, defender. He more than doubled his block number for a season over the course of his career. Doubled his steals by his senior year, tripled his assists. So all of the little things he's doing. His free throw percentage ends up over 75% by his senior year. His overall field goal percentage goes up every year. 3-point shooting percentage didn't. He actually peaked as a sophomore there. That's the one stat that kind of went against the grain on the other ones. But yeah, I mean, he just became so good in so many ways. I like this nomination more than I expected to.
This one I picked out here. I said Dwayne Evans, man, and it was to me like I think about Dwayne Evans, and I remember that I had a friend whose dad watched him play in senior year of high school, and said he just did not look like he was going to be ready for college. And going from that review as a high school senior to what we saw against New Mexico State, what we saw against those Butler teams his junior and senior year. I just think he put it all together, added so much to his game, and that's kind of where my head is at for this question. I think it doesn't necessarily have to be scoring or numbers. It can also be what have they added to their game.
I think that's well said. He's yeah, like all four of those guys, right? That core, um, McCall, Evans, Jet, Lowe, we're all nominated for this. And I think some of that has to do with that's the young core that Majerus brought in, coached up, and then they kind of went on autopilot, under Cruz, did their thing. But like Evans is a guy so smart, so tough, really worked on his game, built out his game, played kind of an undersized four at times.
Weird ass size.
Yeah, kind of an in-betweener, right? So
Yeah.
it's definitely a guy where like, yeah, if you get that kind of review from a friend's dad or whatever, like you kind of go, yeah, okay, I kind of get that. What is this guy going to bring us? He really has statistically two halves of his career. You look at his freshman and sophomore year, he averages around 8 points and 7 rebounds a game. And then as a junior and senior, he averages around 14 points a game and still around 7 rebounds a game. His assists and steals double year over year. Like he's at about 22 steals a year as for each of his first 2 years. Then he's in the mid 40s. And the same thing happens with assists. His field goal percentage and free throw percentage keep getting stronger. His defense keeps getting stronger. Evans is a really good. He's another one where I knew he wasn't quite as steady across 4 years as McCall, but I thought he was a little bit. I didn't realize he had quite the jump he did from his sophomore to junior year, and that's really when he came into his own.
I wonder if the lack of Evans being included is due to a guy we're going to talk about last on this list. And
That's
he was a bit overshadowed in an improvement sense.
I think that's one of the things that I kept having to remind myself is like sometimes when you see those year over year leaps, it's not necessarily somebody who like really got after it in the summer, but it's like it became his starting job, like that kind of thing happened in a lot of cases.
Let's talk about Jordair Jet, man. Why is he on this? Why?
It's hard to think of him as anything but this like force of nature, right?
Yeah.
Like just so tough. We think of senior year Jordair Jet, who put the team on his back. As a freshman, he averages 7.5 points. As a sophomore, 6.5, but he was a little more efficient from the field. But remember, this is when Mitchell comes back. So we see a dip in his number. We see a dip in McCall's numbers. And then 9 points a game as a junior. He gets way more efficient, over 50% from the field. He's making a third of his threes, puts up a 51 assist, leap from where he was the year before. And then his senior year, he scores almost 14 a game on about 50% shooting again. Not good from three as a senior. 4 rebounds a game, which is a career high. 164 assists, which was another 50 assist jump or more than that. 51 steals. And as we said, he just put the team on his back. Think about that winning streak. How many times did Jordair Jet just like take the ball and bail us out at the end of a game? I'm thinking of a game against Rhode Island where he did that. That's one that always kind of stands out that I was certain was going to snap that win streak. And time after time.
Or UMass? Which one was his drive?
It was like everybody. It was everybody.
Yeah. And then of course he had the NC State.
Yes. Yep. Exactly. So I mean, he was always rock solid, but he just kept getting better. It's another one where people put in those 4 names, and yeah, I was surprised by this one. It was more than I realized.
This one doesn't ring for me just because that's just Chris Sloan.
Yeah, I feel like I knew him too well. We overlapped by 3 years, and so I missed his freshman year where he scores 1.3 points a game, 1.4 rebounds a game. You know,
Stiff.
the person who I don't know if I would say that, but the
No,
person
I know. I'm
who
just being
nominated him here said, yeah, hey, say whatever you want about Sloan. It makes me laugh every time. But
I just want to make him laugh.
yeah, exactly. So he plays almost every game in his 4-year career, and the person who nominates him here says as a freshman he thought he was a guard, like he tried to play too much as a guard, and that's the year I missed. I wasn't around for that one. I see his sophomore year, which was under Romar, and then his junior and senior years under Soderberg. So as a sophomore, he jumps up to 3.7 points per game, 3.2 rebounds per game. Junior 7.6 and 3.8. Senior 9.7 and 4.8. So again, a clean 4-year arc in all of his stats here. His shooting efficiency was a little better as a junior than as a senior, but all other categories keep rising. Career highs in assists, steals, blocks as a senior, to go with points and rebounds. So all 5 of them. It's a pretty straightforward upward line in this one, a nice trajectory. And one that, again, I'm close to the team day to day. I wasn't really thinking about or looking at statistics so much when I was there, right? So it is always interesting to me to go back and look. I would have thought he put up bigger numbers as like a sophomore and junior, for example.
You didn't have to do any research on the numbers. His career peaked when he posterized Channing Frye and was immortalized in the SLU recruiting video.
That's right. Was that his? Now I'm trying to think of what year that would have been.
It was
that
when
junior?
Arizona played here. I just remember it was embarrassing because Arizona fans were so loud.
That may have been his senior year and my junior year.
Then he wins. Then he wins. If it's his senior year, he wins.
Yeah. I don't know. I may be wrong. I may be off by
senior year, man.
Yeah. I can't. I think that's right though.
This next player is he was my childhood my favorite Billiken as a child. And he was my favorite podcast guest when I had him on.
Oh yeah.
The house. It's Jeff Harris.
Jeff Harris is the man. I like Jeff Harris a lot.
Jeff Harris, looking back with nostalgia, I have a hard time placing him anywhere but number 1.
So make the case. I'll just run through the numbers really quick. A point and a half and a rebound and a half as a freshman.
That I love the guy.
So he averages 7 and 6 as a sophomore. So he's taking a big jump. Now he's up to 13.6 and 7.9 rebounds a game as a junior, and then down a little bit to 12.9 and 7.1 as a senior. Could be personnel affected again. Big jump in assists though as a senior, but really consistent those last 2 years. But I don't know, make the case for him anecdotally, Zach. I mean, I don't have quite as much emotion behind the career of Jeff Harris, but you look, I like him a lot. And this is more of, I thought he did more as a freshman. So I didn't think this was going to be as big a trajectory as it is.
Dude, I have no idea. I just love Jeff Harris.
That's it.
I was like 4. I don't even know why I liked Jeff Harris. I love Jeff Harris. He was the best.
I think you picked right. I mean, when on your previous show, when you guys talked to him, I mean, that was the best. It was so good. That guy, he's just an incredible storyteller, huge personality, the nicest guy, incredibly generous. And as it turns out, a really good player. I mean, a guy who averages 13 and a half and 8 rebounds, man, what I wouldn't give for that right now, to see a power forward do that.
Pete, the next up is a player that you and I both know a ton about. We watched a ton of his games. I'm just kidding. It's Jesse Leonard. I have no idea who this guy is.
Yeah, his career predates my existence by a little over a decade, and yours by more than that. He played 3 seasons in the early 70s, so I'm guessing this is back when they still had the freshman team, and I think he probably just missed the era where you could play 4 years of varsity, but he only scored 2.5 in his first year on 37% shooting, 65% from the line. His second year, he goes up to 12.5 points a game on 44% shooting, 75% from the line. He triples his assists to 45. Junior year, or I guess senior year, sorry, 15 points a game, 46% from the field, just under 70% from the line, 75 assists. It's just a really nice, solid trend line. I mean, he's a bigger passer and a bigger scorer every year. Just boom, boom, boom. Really solid player. And I guess, what is he putting up? Yeah, 15 points, 3 assists a game as a senior. I'll take that. That's a really nice guard.
You know what? If anybody knows how to get in contact with Jesse Leonard, you know,
Absolutely. That's really an era I know nothing about.
and we need to do like Billiken fans, like there are stories that are closing in on like not being told ever again. That
Yeah.
if you guys have any connections out there to any players, I mean pre Spoon Hour, pre Grower, Jesus man, send them our way. Point us in a direction to talk to them. We would, I mean, I would love that so much.
Yeah, we know some of those guys are still around St. Louis and stuff too. So yeah, just let us know. But yeah, total blind spot in terms of that era. But I really like the numbers for him in terms of making the case for him here.
The Greek god of rejection, Ian Vayukas.
Ian's another one that I know, personally. Ian's first night in the States was spent in my apartment actually, because I lived and worked on campus in the summers. So when he came over for his freshman year, which I guess would have been my did we overlap by 2 years? I guess it would have been going into my junior year. I had a village apartment to myself, right? Because it was where I was going to live in the fall, but I was on campus working. My roommates weren't there yet, and I kept the apartment about as cold as a refrigerator. Because I'm a 20-year-old working outside in the heat all day, and just yeah, love the AC, cranked it way too high. Probably the reason people pay so much for a room and board at SLU is because of
Thanks a lot.
idiot college kids who don't actually know what a good AC temp is. So Ian has to spend the night somewhere before they can get his apartment together, and that was one of my extra bedrooms in the village. I had no linens, I had no extra towels. I was a complete idiot. I guess 20, 21 years old, knew nothing about how to host
I
somebody.
didn't change my sheets once in college. Sorry to tell
He
everybody.
slept, Zach, a 6'11" kid from Greece comes into the States, and his first night is slept on a bare vinyl mattress in one of my extra bedrooms with like a carpet pad as a blanket. He was so cold. He had like he's coming from Greece, mind you. It's hot all the time. There's not a lot of air conditioning. It's just like open everything. The kid's never been cold in his life. And he goes into an apartment that to him would have felt like a meat refrigerator, like a meat locker, and he's like shivering all
Rocky's
night.
in there
But he
punching.
was too shy and too nice to say, "You idiot! Like go to your parents' house and get some like sheets and towels and stuff for me. They live 7 minutes away." Like he doesn't know what's up. I didn't. I was too dumb. I think I had a 6-pack and a couple hot dogs in the fridge. Like just that's where I was in my life. So Ian Vayukas had nowhere to go but up from the time that he arrived on campus. And I actually thought, Zach, because I saw him play every day and he was incredibly skilled. Chris Sloan, I don't know if he said this in his interview with you, but he said to Ian, or he said about Ian, he's like, that dude's going to be in the NBA someday, just because he passed and he did things like, think of like I don't know, a poor man's Jokic, right? Like he
I
would
was
be
just
out at the
thinking
top
it.
of the key, passing, handling the ball, like keeping it away from people and stuff in really weird ways that like we had never seen before. And then he would just like finish with this like crafty little layup, and you're just like, whoa, where'd this guy come from? But he only averaged 2.2 as a freshman, under 2 rebounds, only played in 21 games. I really thought he was more productive early on. Then you go to his sophomore year. His junior year, he's up to almost 14 points a game to go with 7.4 rebounds. He's 55% from the field, 73% from the line. He regresses a little as a senior, 12.4 points a game, 7.4 rebounds. He shoots 52%, but he's way down at the line, 60%. Assists, blocks are kind of flat year to year. It felt more of a drop off at the time than it was, if I remember. And also like after his junior year, that's when he kind of flirted with the draft. A lot of us thought he was going to go pro, and he didn't. And in hindsight, he probably should have, because I think his value was higher at that point. He put up better numbers. He was kind of in a better place. He went on to a long pro career back in Greece. And I'm sure that's probably how it would have worked out regardless.
Played for
Um,
Rick Pitino.
Yeah, I guess he did for a minute, didn't he? That's right. I forgot about that. But yeah, long career over there. Good guy. I still owe him for that first
Yeah,
night
I
that
was gonna
I
ask, did
tortured
you
him.
never made it up to him?
Of course not. If I
Jeez.
didn't have the consideration to give him like sheets or a blanket, I certainly didn't make it up to him. So someday, Ian, I'll run into him in Europe or something and buy him dinner. But
We got to get him on the podcast. I know I tried, and
we,
it just didn't work out with the time difference.
yeah, we should.
Rich Neiman, Pete. I mean, I hear this name comparatively with Jesse Leonard. Rich Neiman is a name I have heard
Yes.
many
Yeah.
times.
I think he put up a little bit bigger numbers overall. He was kind of a bigger deal overall, but not by much, really. I mean, he played 3 seasons in the mid late 60s, so just before Leonard. They didn't cross over. He would have been gone for a couple of years by the time Leonard got there. He only scored 3.2 in his first year, 43% from the field, and then he scores 18.1 points a game his next year, 52% shooting, 84% from the line, 12.3 rebounds per game. It was kind of one of those freshman to sophomore years where you're just like, what happened? Or I guess in his case, sophomore to junior, right? Because there's no freshman on varsity. And then in his last year, 16 points a game, 12.6 rebounds, 52% from the field again, 81% from the line. Basically the same player as a junior and senior after making that huge leap. But incredible numbers. I mean, 18 and 12 and a half. Good Lord. I mean, that's NBA power forward numbers.
I just assume that all baskets in this era were scored by shooting underhand.
Yeah. There's no 3-point line. So definitely bigs have an advantage in that era, but no. Yeah, I don't really again have a big frame of reference for like the late 60s or what they were like, but a lot of people who were around at that time talk about him like he was a real dude.
Mo Jeffers.
Yeah. I don't know if you thought the same thing, but I was like, he was a JUCO player. We only had him 2 seasons, so why is he
Yeah.
even here? Um,
However,
I had no idea that it was that stark between his junior and senior years. 6.6 points, 4.2 rebounds on a slash line of 421, 257, 605 with 55 assists as a junior. 16 points a game, 6.1 rebounds, about 45% from the field, 44% from three, and 78% from the line. He also ups his assists to 76. Zach, I knew he was that good, right? Like, but I just kind of remembered it being a little flatter year to year. I had no idea it was that big a jump. I know that that's common with JUCO players to kind of start a little bit slow, but man, oh man, and he got drafted too. People
by the
forget he was drafted.
Spurs.
Yeah, late second round.
Yeah,
Yeah, I was it the
Spurs.
Spurs, man.
Yep.
I remembered it being the Kings, but
Oh,
regardless,
you know what? Great. Hold on.
he was like he was like 55th overall. And I don't think he ever wound up playing in the league. But
No, I don't. No, he did not.
yeah, so
He was drafted by the Kings. My bad.
yeah, so I mean, just an
Asheville
incredible.
Altitude, Freiburg Olympic, Texas Rim Rockers, Kansas Cagers, Cornelia, Cornella, Kansas Cagers, Baloncesto Leon, La Hospitale, Kansas Cagers again, Yeda Basket. I mean, he had a long, a decade's career all over the world.
He was incredible to watch. I mean, he was a guy like he just had that takeover mode, and that kind of athleticism. We have not seen that kind of player much at all since him. We really haven't. Like just that super athletic wing who can get hot and take over a game like that.
Junior year Perkins or whatever.
Yeah, Perkins, but I don't think he's not the kind of like fluid athlete that Jeffers was. I'm standing by what I'm saying. I like Perkins. He's a
oh
bit
my
of
god, one of his dunks though, dude. Like it was the most. What was it? The Seton Hall dunk. I've never seen a guy fly like that.
I stand by what. Go back and
Okay.
watch. Go
All
back and
right.
watch tape on Jeffers. He looked different. There's a reason he
Um,
was drafted, man. He was
okay.
really something.
I don't, which was a shock to me when it happened.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
Um,
late second round, you never know.
yeah. All right, we're heading back to the Luchtefelds, Pete. How about Hefe?
Yeah. So I think Jeff is a stronger case than Ryan because he starts at a lower point and winds up at a little bit higher point. Um, didn't really play as a freshman. You know, he appeared in 14 games, but scored a total of 7 points. And then he just steadily increases 3.5 points a game as a sophomore, 6.2 as a junior, and 12.9 points a game as a senior, which is more than I realized, by the way. More steals as a senior than in his first 3 seasons combined. Same is true of assists. He's kind of the opposite of Carlos McCauley, who we talked about a little earlier. His overall shooting improved every year, but his 3-point shooting dropped from junior to senior year, and his free throw shooting also got a little worse that year. Rebounding peaked as a junior as well. So it's kind of an odd case because he puts up big numbers in points, assists, and steals as a senior, but just seemed to become a different kind of overall player. But there's no question he had a big arc overall, and that by junior and senior year, he was just, totally different than the freshman who barely played.
This is another one of my favorites. 8th grade, 7th grade, I tried to wear the sleeveless cut off underneath, or the cut off the sleeveless undershirt underneath the basketball jersey. Marquis Perry, number 5.
Yeah, Marquis is a guy who was there for my freshman and sophomore years, were his junior and senior years. 6 points a game as a freshman with 50 assists, kind of hard for me to even imagine, because by his senior year, he's scoring 17.1 points a game, and he had doubled that assist production. And it's a nice arc all along too, right? He's just over 10 points a game as a sophomore, just over 14 as a junior, consistent shooting percentages. It's funny because Romar would tell a story. When Spoon retired, he had already signed Marquis. Did he signed or committed? I think he was signed by then. Yeah. And he tells Romar, he didn't give him a whole lot of information, Spoon being Spoon, not a big information guy, more of an anecdote guy. And he tells Romar, you're really going to like the little fella. So I think Spoonhour knew he had something in Marquis Perry. He just didn't really stay around to find out what it was, unfortunately, for Spoon, I guess.
And of course, Marquis Perry etched his name in Billiken lore forever by scoring the winning basket against Louisville.
Yeah, that was an incredible night. That broke I think a 7-game losing streak at the time, and then we started rattling off some wins after that, and really salvaged that season. It was Soderberg's first year. It was Marquis' senior year, and he was a guy who, I don't think he actually ever played an NBA game, but he was in the Spurs organization for a while.
That's where I got Spurs.
Yeah.
From.
Yeah. So he was this close. And you sort of wonder, like, if another team had his rights at the time, what would have happened? They didn't quite have the built out G League infrastructure that they do now. At that time, I think that idea was sort of in its infancy, but he was close. He was really close to the league. And that dude, he was just a really quiet, serious guy who worked really hard, but also really a sweet guy too, like a really nice person. And man, I wish he would have had his shot at the NBA.
Yeah, I think he definitely has a shot at this title. Not that there's somebody who's going to win the title at the end of the day, but I think Marquis Perry certainly has a wonderful case. I mean,
yeah,
that's an 11 points per game increase,
right?
Which is preposterous. And I mean, look at him. He almost 4, 4, and 4. He increased by 4 almost every time except for that last season.
It's amazing. It really is. And it's also somebody who's starting at 6 points a game as a freshman, right? Like a lot of the guys on this list are guys who scored 1 to 3 points as a freshman, which is just guys who are end of the bench, barely getting in. It's a little bit different to be a freshman who's actually producing a little bit. He was never a great 3-point shooter, But he really had a command of his physicality. He was a really
Yes.
unique looking player. Who I liked quite a bit.
And of
So
course, he was a small player, so he resonated with me.
of course.
Harold Alcorn. My goodness. We're going way back for this one.
He is the oldest name on the list in terms of when he played. It was 3 seasons in the mid 50s, right? So again, it's no freshman season there, but he scored 5.7 in his first season, 11.3 the next year, and then 20.1 as a senior. So I'd say, yeah, that's a pretty nice arc to his career. We don't really have a ton of other stats from the era, but it looks like his rebounding went up over time. He got better at the free throw line. Just seems like he was the go-to guy for that team coming out of, the Easy Ed era, decade behind those guys when they first showed up on campus. So really impressive career. Anybody who can score 20 points a game in college is the real deal. Especially when they don't start out like at that level or anything.
Charles Newberry, again, another name that I hear a lot and I really don't have a frame of reference for. So frame it.
Really good point guard. Just put up kind of big numbers in an era, well before Yuri Collins, right? Like his name has come up more recently as Collins has kind of broken some records, and I saw his name on a lot of those assist lists. He played 3 seasons. His first season, he scores 5.7 a game, 97 assists, 18 steals. Then he goes to 6.8 points a game in his second year, 134 assists, 32 steals. Then he winds up at 12.8 points a game, 164 assists, 48 steals. Just a really complete point guard. His overall field goal percentage decreased kind of as his usage increased, but he got more efficient at the free throw line and from behind the arc, found ways to be effective and passing the ball like crazy. I mean, I just really like that complete arc there, right? Like it's his scoring and his passing and his defense that are all coming up together at the same time over 3 years. That was a pretty strong one to me.
This is probably the most notable improvements on this list. Pete, do we believe in the Conklin summer?
I actually do. It's funny how mythical that's become as kind of the hardcore basketball fans shorthand for a big year-over-year improvement. The story being that Brian Conklin from his junior to senior year just worked his butt off, made himself into this incredible force to be reckoned with by the time he was a senior. And when you look at it, it kind of is a real thing. Like he goes from 8.7 points a game to 13.9, not the biggest year-over-year improvement we've seen on this list, but it's organic, right? Like it's not coming because all of a sudden he was on a loaded team where everybody graduated and there was nobody there. Like it was his role and it was still his role. He was kind of being this much more effective in kind of the same role. He improved in every stat category except blocks, which were kind of flat, and field goal percentage, which was almost flat, just barely missed that one. But and then he took kind of that leadership role with this solid young core behind him. So he's got those guys were all sophomores that year, right? Yeah. So like Jet, Lowe, McCall, those guys are all sophomores. And he also goes on to shoot 80% from the free throw line as a senior, despite never having shot over, I think, 68% before that. Just to kind of give you an idea, as a freshman, he averaged 6.1 points a game and 3.9 rebounds a game. So by the end of his career, he's more than doubled his point production without sacrificing any efficiency. He actually is a really strong contender for the best arc here. The numbers aren't quite as eye-popping as they are for a few others, like Marquis, for Newberry, for Harold Alcorn, some of those other guys. But I think there's a really solid case to be made for him.
So yeah, I think there's something to be said again here for the non-statistical points. He did get he worked hard to get healthy, his ankle. He worked hard on his strength. You see a body transformation uh, from freshman to senior year. The way, he just kind of made himself not only on the court, but in the way he carried himself. He added the beard a little bit, it's, you saw him go from baby face who missed bunnies to grizzled veteran who was punishing screens on Washington players. So I think some of it, we watched it live. We got, we saw it on highlights. It is a nostalgic era for Billiken fans, but the Conklin summer is no joke.
It isn't. And the way that his pro career has gone in Australia and where else he's played, he's developed a reputation as, I don't want to say an enforcer, because I think he brings more than that. He's not just like a dude like John Chaney would put in to go elbow somebody in the throat. He really is a tough guy who wears that on his sleeve. He's got that chip on his shoulder. He plays really hard. He plays really physical. He's carried on that junior year to senior year leap into his pro career. Is he still playing? I think he still might be playing. Or did he just give it up?
No, I think he's still looking. Or he did sign somewhere though.
So like he continues to be that, and he's got a certain swagger too. Whenever he pops up on our Twitter feed, that I really like. There's just something about the guy's persona and confidence, and everybody remembers that press conference where both he and Rick broke down in tears after the Michigan State game in Columbus, and he was a special player. And I do, this is where I do want to remind people who always seem to have strong ideas about where we're getting our recruits from. He's from Oregon. He's not from a place where SLU has historically recruited, where we've continued to recruit. We found the right kid, right situation. He was an amazing player for us for 4 years, and really a cornerstone of what that team became for the next 2 years behind him as well. And I don't want people to sort of write off players just based on where they're coming from. I know it's more fun to have a local guy who you're already familiar with, but just keep that in mind. I guess I would say, as we're always recruiting, you never know where your next Brian Conklin's coming from. It
could be coming from Germany.
Never know.
Pete, as I'm running through this incredible list, I think we're going to put it out as some sort of poll, but I'm wondering, it is, it's not bracket season, but we could make it bracket season.
Oh, wow. That's a good idea. 22. We add
4 buys.
Why don't we add 10 more names to kind of fill it out?
Could we do it like a college baseball where we just have an offshoot of or US Open Cup where they enter late in the bracket? I don't know.
We'll figure out the format.
We're going to do this by Wednesday.
Yeah, we'll figure it out. I like the idea though. That's fun. That gives us something to kind of ponder here. Yes. Because I know people have strong opinions on this, but yeah, if look, make sure you listen to that. And I guess by now you've already listened to it. I don't know why I'm saying it afterwards, but hopefully by now people have heard us make a case, or not a strong case, for 22 different guys who I think are all worthy of the most improved, the lifetime achievement MIP award.
Yeah, I think we could do a play-in game. We could do 4 buys and then into a 16 team tournament. Yeah. 16 player. I think that works out. I don't know. Maybe
no, that makes sense. We'll whatever the first round looks like, we'll get it to 16.
Pete, I had a note. I wanted to get into some Billiken soccer versus City versus men's Billiken basketball versus NBA. But I think I'm going to save that, considering that we just ran through the gauntlet of 22 great improved Billikens. And I think we can move on to kind of some more recent news, and that's NIL collectives. Some interesting stuff went down. I don't usually get into like news, so this is I don't really know exactly what's going on, but it sounds like the NIL collectives may not be on the up and up, according to the IRS.
Yeah, and this was interesting to me. Financial news maybe is a little more up my alley, but
We know everybody loves to have fun, at the IRS.
yeah, and taxation is a really fun thing to talk about. It's why
Oh,
people tune in. But just quickly to run through, this is the IRS. As Zach said, fun for everyone. Posted a 12-page memo late last week
it's like the
stating that
slinky.
that NIL collectives offering tax deductions due to their 501c3 status may be doing so illegally. They said that donations to NIL collectives are not tax exempt because the benefits they provide college athletes are, quote, not incidental, both qualitatively and quantitatively, to any exempt purpose.
Nerds.
Meaning, yeah, to translate that, meaning the purpose of these tax exempt donations to NIL collectives are not charitable in nature, right? Like they're just going to a recruit to play basketball somewhere. And then any charity that comes out of that is more or less off to the side and incidental. There are 200 collectives roughly in existence so far, and about 80 of them, including the Billiken Victory Fund, claim 501c3 status. So I don't think it's the actual nonprofit status or the label that's up for debate, but it's the fact that donors have been giving money while assuming it's tax deductible, and the IRS is saying that that's just not right. It's now not allowable based on the direct purpose of the funds.
You wonder if there are. I mean, this is a world of loopholes. There's a loophole for everything. I mean, you look at. I mean, is it the idea that it's charitable because the the student athletes do the charitable work, or is it charitable because they're raising money for these poor student athletes?
Well, I think the idea is that there would be a service or charity component to every NIL
Yes.
deal. But again, that's them partnering with a nonprofit for a charitable purpose that I honestly haven't seen a lot of that yet. What format that takes, right? Like what we're seeing is dudes are getting paid to play ball. That it's really, I I haven't seen the charity part of it, so much, but it's indirect regardless. It's not the direct use of the funds. Now there are some prominent boosters, and I was reminded of this by my buddy Joe, who said like there was a big Mizzou donor who was, and I'm sorry to say Voldemort's name around you, Zach, but there was a big Mizzou donor who told people from the start, like, look, don't assume that these are going to be tax deductible donations. Like don't give these funds to collectives assuming that this is going to be tax free. Just assume that it's like any other expense in your life. And I hope people took his advice. I hope other collectives have at least said, we're not 100% sure how this is going to play out, but we're claiming this status, and hopefully it ends up being tax deductible. If there are people giving huge sums of money to this, assuming they're going to be able to write it off of their taxes, this is a pretty cold bucket of water in their faces.
It's like betting, expecting to win.
Yeah, right. I mean, it could really have a cooling effect. It's really not clear what the next steps are legally. I mean, collectives will likely have to be clear that donations are not tax deductible, like when they're soliciting donations. But the IRS could potentially tax previous donations. They could even charge people with penalties. No one's going to jail or anything like that. But I think it kind of pumps the brakes a little bit. It could have a bit of a cooling effect on how much people are giving, or people who are getting ready to kind of jump into this, maybe holding off for now. I mean, it just depends. So there are school officials out there saying that they're glad that their collective isn't set up as a 501c3, because these things were never charities to begin with, and that felt pretty obvious. I mean, look, it never felt right as soon as I saw that these were being organized as nonprofits in some cases, it was just kind of like, why? I mean, I remember, I think I said on the show several months ago, like it feels like this use of money more than any other feels like the kind of thing that absolutely should be taxed. Like, why is this special? Just paying people to play sports. Like, come on, it's just straight up money. Like going to someone to provide a service. There's nothing special here, even if you force somebody to do some charity work. I never got that to begin with. Someone else said they could go under the same sort of organizational structure as like a private club, like a country club or a swim club or whatever, which is a thought. I mean, that's interesting. I'm not really sure, but regardless, I think the idea that this money would be tax deductible, this seems fine to me. I don't think it's anything to get all upset about, but I certainly feel like if there are people who have given a lot of money to this so far, they're going to be upset regardless.
I would hope that people that have that much money know this stuff, or their accountant knows this stuff. Like, it just seems like if you're in the business of giving massive sums of money.
I would, the one thing I would say, Zach, is that I did a few years. I've mostly been in corporate banking in my career, but I did a few years in wealth management, and you'd be surprised at what some very wealthy people lack in terms of sophistication financially. I mean, every week something new shocked me, and it really punctured any sort of idea you might have about like the very wealthy being special in terms of their abilities. Most of them are wealthy just because they received money, not because they earned money. So just to like, look, no hate to anyone out there, whatever your situation in life is, but I was just shocked by what I learned in those 2 years about what people don't know. So I wouldn't be surprised at all if there are a lot of rich what's one of the terms, fail sons out there, just
The Murdochs
putting his money into no, not that. I'm not even saying
well,
that.
I mean, Alex Murdoch for sure.
Yeah, the Connor Roys of the world out there who are just finding frivolous uses for a whole lot of money. But no, regardless, yeah, that's going to be a rude awakening for a lot of people, I think, and hopefully nobody too involved with SLU, though. I'd like to think our donors are a little more savvy, but I really don't know.
Well, that'll do it for us this week in Billiken Athletics. Follow us on Twitter at Midtown Mad Pod, at Peter is a tweeter, at Zach Miller MMP, and on Instagram at Midtown Mad Pod. If you've made it this far, go check out my race vlog from Chattanooga from a couple weeks ago. It's up on YouTube. It's Zach Miller Triathlon. You can watch it. Don't watch it. I appreciate it anyway.
And you had another race this weekend, by the way. How'd that one go?
I did. It was the worst. It was. I thought I was at the Tour de France on the bike with the hills. I thought I was at the Alpe d'Huez or whatever the hell it is. And then I swear to God, I was continuously running up a mountain on that run. I'm never going back there. Never. Not even for vacation.
You finished.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, yeah, definitely. Well, that's it for us. We appreciate any and all suggestions you might have for the show. Subscribe, rate, all that good stuff. A review would be cool as well. As always, Pete, go Bills.
Go Bills.